All right. So you have your final thumbnail sketches and you have a variety of them. So what you're ready to do next is to start laying out your final project. So here are a collection of thumbnail sketches. Now yours might be more detailed like this, or they might be rougher, but what they should have is a box that is either a square or a rectangle. You can have different formats for your paper, but that is something for a different video. So we're just going to kind of deal with squares or rectangles. So you are going to choose the one that you think is strongest, and I'm going to go with this one, which is a square, and then you're going to get your final artwork paper. So I'm working in this sketchbook, and what I need to do is I need to take the image that I have here and proportionally enlarge it to fit into the same square, except it's larger, over on my paper. This is going to be a final graphite drawing, so I am thinking about that. I probably don't want to make a graphite drawing that's like 12 inches by 12 inches because it's just going to be way too large, unless I plan on spending that much time. So I have a square here. I need to measure out a square over here. Now I always recommend that you keep a border on your artwork. The reason for that, there's two reasons. Number one, if you have a border on your artwork, then usually what happens is when you handle or when you are working on your artwork, any damage usually happens on the edge of the paper. So if you make a border, then your damage is happening in the border and not on your actual artwork. The other reason I recommend a border on your artwork is that if you decide to frame it or mat it, then that mat will not cover up any of your artwork. It's going to allow the person that is matting your artwork to easily mat it without taking away any of your actual artwork. So I'm going to do a square. Square's pretty easy. This is an 11-inch paper wide, so my final square, the large final piece, is not going to be any larger than 11 by 11 inches. However, I am going to leave a border on this. Like I said, I'm going to do a 1/2 inch border. So with my ruler, I'm going to go ahead and mark a 1/2 inch from that end and a 1/2 inch from that end. If you are not so good with a ruler, find somebody at your table or around the room that is. I always like to make a couple marks, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, use my ruler to connect that. I am working with my just my H pencil, I believe. So that means if I make any mistakes, they're easy to erase. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the top edge. This is a perforated page, so I'm going to start measuring from there. I'm going to first measure 11 inches. Because that's where the original one was, and I'm going to do the same thing here. 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, making sure I line it up at the perforation, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, and now I'm going to connect that. So this should end up being a 10 by 10 square. Alright, so now here is my job. My job is to get the general layout of this into here, and I'm going to use my H pencil to do this. But before I do that, I'm going to draw a grid. So in order to get this so I have things generally where I want them, as shown in the thumbnail, I use this set of guidelines, grid lines, and see where things are placed that way. So that is my grid line in my thumbnail sketch. Now I'm going to make a grid line on my final drawing paper. Now this is really important. Do this very, very lightly. You do not want to have these lines end up appearing in your final artwork. They're just for these layout stages. In fact, it's so light you might not be able to see it. So I am going to draw it a little bit darker for this, just so you have a better idea. All right, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start drawing some of the main features in the spot that they go. So the first thing I see is this eye. This does not have to be a perfect drawing. This is just to start to get the layout. And again, I'm going to draw a little darker than I normally would because I know that it's hard to see. So things I'm paying attention to is where does that eye cross over that guideline. I'm actually going to divide this in half here and here because I'm noticing I'm not making it large enough. So I'm just going to go around and I'm going to start with a rough placement of things, and then I'm going to get more specific. And when I get more specific, that is when I'm going to actually go back to my reference images. So that's how you get started. You have a thumbnail sketch. You make this same format over here, so square to square. Put some grid lines on your thumbnail, put some grid lines on your final paper, and start sketching the placement very, very lightly. Good luck.